For more than 60 years, the Indiana Hospital School of Nursing graduated more than 900 nurses and was a great source of pride for IRMC. The school was open from 1915 until it graduated its last class in 1979.
The nursing school opened in 1915. The hospital opened its doors in 1914, I'm sure you're aware. And the first class of nursing students graduated in 1918 with 12 students completing the course. And then the last graduating class was in 1979, and there were 19 students in that class.
For enrollment, the only requirement was a high school diploma. No entrance exam was given and tuition was free. However, they were put on a probation period for 3 months. The 3-year nursing students overwhelmingly made up most of the hospital's workforce. They worked 12-hour shifts from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The first teachers were hospital administrators Sarah M. Morgert and Director of Nurses Eliza Dill Weinman, with staff doctors lecturing occasionally. Nursing uniforms have evolved through the years. Though changes have come, one thing remained the same. Uniform dress codes were strictly enforced. Originally, nurses wore a blue-striped uniform with a white bib, apron, long sleeves, cuffs, and a starched muslin cap.
Our uniforms were so stiff that they stood alone in the corner. That is the truth. And we would peel them apart on the bottom to get into them. And when we walked, there was a swish, swish, swish. You always knew when a student nurse was coming because of the uniform.
In the 60s, the uniforms were a blue and white checkered dress with a white bib, white hose, and cap. The uniforms were not complete unless the nurse carried a pen, notebook, and scissors on them at all times. The housing for the school was constantly changing and needing to expand. In 1916, a 3-story building was erected to house the students.
It was a 3-story building, and the first level was where the classrooms were, and there was an auditorium there. And then the one wing, the second and third levels, were dormitory-like rooms, and that's where the first and second year students lived. The other wing was for the third year students. And it was dormitory living is what it was.
Several other expansions were necessary over the years due to the continuing increases in enrollment. In 1929, an addition was built, effectively doubling the size of the residence. In 1937, a new nurses' home was built and eventually expanded in 1947. This expansion was partly made possible by donations from Indiana's most famous son, movie star Jimmy Stewart. In the mid-1930s, a very important expansion was planned. Indiana Hospital was too small to be recognized by the state as a complete training school for nurses and to qualify for interns. John S. Mack, owner of G.C. Murphy Company, a chain of 5 and dime stores, put into motion a plan to expand the hospital's capacity. The original idea was to build a separate heating plant to free up space inside the hospital. But when more space was needed, Mack volunteered the money to build an additional wing. The Mack Wing, as it came to be known, was completed in 1939. While this expansion allowed the nursing school to award its own diplomas, it also forced them to start charging tuition to the students. Later in the 1940s, an entrance exam was also made mandatory for admission. The 3-year education of the nurses would eventually come to include 2 semesters at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, 3-month clinical stays at a pediatric hospital, and a psychiatric institution. They were also guaranteed a job upon completion. Many of Indiana's nurses would fulfill their patriotic duty during the two world wars. During the First World War, a group of 7 nurses from the Indiana Hospital Nurses Unit trained at Camp Lee before being assigned to Walter Reed Medical Center in Washington, D.C., to work with wounded officers. When America entered World War II, the nursing school was one of the first schools to enroll in the United States Cadet Corps program, which eventually graduated 41 Indiana nurses. Through the years, there have been a number of key women who have helped lead the nursing school to success. One of the most notable was Nettie Beeler, Director of Nursing from 1948 to 1965.
Miss Beeler was a very foreboding individual. She came across as very strict and very tough, and she was strict. However, she was the kindest lady underneath all of that armor, and she loved her students. She would have done anything for us. If we made a mistake, she always stood behind us. She never put us down in front of anyone else. But then later, she would take us aside and say, "You know, that was wrong."
During her tenure, the Indiana Hospital nursing students became affiliated with Indiana University of Pennsylvania.
Here at IUP, we had the regular professors. We had anatomy and physiology, sociology, psychology, nutrition. Those are the ones that come to mind right now. And they were very tough classes.
Another important woman was Ruby Dobson. In 1965, when she became director, the entire curriculum was revised. Under her tenure, 2 important things happened. The program received their first accreditation from the Board of Diploma Programs of the National League for Nursing. And in 1966, the first married woman and the first male student were admitted to the school. As the 1970s began, the long-awaited Visiting Nurses Association of Indiana County was organized. This gave the elderly and chronically ill a much-needed alternative to being hospitalized. In September 1976, Indiana University of Pennsylvania Department of Nursing began an affiliation with Indiana Hospital for student nurses to complete clinical training there. Soon after, on November 26, a fire broke out in the nurses' residence building.
It was Thanksgiving weekend. The good news was most of the students were not there because they had gone home for the holiday.
That was devastating to all of us who had attended the school.
While no one was injured, the school was destroyed, and a decision was made to close the school for good after the graduation of the current freshman class.
It was devastating that the school that had existed from 1918 was no longer going to be there.
On the 23rd of March, 1979, the 61st and final class of 19 members graduated. As nursing progressed, changes have come to the profession. The institution of nursing has become more gender neutral, and the uniforms have changed to address this. The starched white dresses have been replaced by the colorful, more comfortable scrubs of today. Throughout the years, it has become common for nurses to have bachelor and master's degrees. Today, approximately 73% of the patient care staff at IRMC are registered nurses. Nurses have also been given a voice in areas beyond patient care. They are now involved in establishing hospital policies, procedures, and practices. The nurses at IRMC today are more knowledgeable than ever, and the commitment to quality patient care has remained the top priority.